issues was my sister just having no respect for the man. And I talked about how men do not have to give respect in order to receive respect, that men should just give respect off of GP. And I was just kind of just blown because like my sister felt the need that she not only tried to disrespect me, but when my grandfather was in the house and said he didn't want no yelling in the house, she just totally disregarded him. And my concern is that even in marriages, like relationships, and just even as strangers, that women feel that it's okay to disrespect a man. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, I'm using it.
So Kevin Samuels is on this panel. Greetings and welcome back once again. This is Amuna. So we're going to do a little noteworthy, and I found it interesting before we get to the very disturbing things that Kevin Samuels is going to say. The host is sharing that he feels there's a thought process that men should get respect. They don't need to first give respect to get respect. That's an interesting concept, and then that lends to the fact that someone may feel as though they can do whatever they want, and it doesn't matter because respect is only one way. I find that highly problematic, but let's continue anyway, shall we?
A couple of ways and tied into something I heard earlier. If we can't hold anybody accountable that we are directly tied to, we can't have a community. You used to get a whooping by Mr. Brown if Mr. Brown saw you doing something wrong because you were accountable to the community, not just your mama and daddy. We'll leave that sitting right there. The women today don't fear what Sean Connery told Barbara Walters. There are times when the best course of action is to slap a woman. That's what Sean Connery said. It's still on.
So how he paused a little bit, and he's saying basically that Shahzad Ali thought there are times when the best course of action is to slap a woman. So you go from speaking about a child, where the child needs to be reared up and disciplined, to transferring that thought process onto a grown person who's supposed to get into a next phase of life in which they're holding one another accountable, but the thought process is to go back to that of a child and to, as he said, what Sean Connery said, slap the woman. Let's continue.
YouTube right now, go look at it. And Barbara Walters was like, thought he was going to recant his statement, and he doubled down. He said, let me explain what I mean. He's like, women have a way of not knowing how to let things go. You can give up the argument. You can let it go. They can know they've won. There's nothing else to be gained, and they will continue to push and push and push. And he said, at that point, once you've exhausted all other options, then a slap becomes a good option. And you only have to do it once. Shahrazad Ali tried to say that stuff, and it said
a slap becomes a good option. So walking away is not an option. Getting out of the person's space is not an option. Advising that the person take a walk is not an option. Slapping the person is an option. And that's the best option. And you only have to do it once. Ask High Tina Turner.
Black community on fire. Why is this? Because between the men on this platform right now, if we were to moderate what we say, whether we know each other or not, because there's a low-level threat of violence and aggression between all men. Fuck YouTube, fuck degrees, fuck money. You cross a certain line with a man, we're going to have to shoot the fair one. We know that. You can be in a wheelchair, you can be on a crutch, you can whatever. You can be special. You got to do that. But see, there is no low-level threat of violence between women and men today. Women are allowed.
There's no low level. Listen to this conversation is progressing. When I caught wind of it, I shared my thoughts. And it's progressing, because that's what these type of thoughts do. You see, slowly introducing, breadcrumbing you until you find yourself into a corner, until you find yourself compromised, until you find yourself abused, and you wonder how you got there. Because first, you denigrate her in public, you chew her down with your words. He says there's no low-level threat of violence, but the women who call into his show, he virtually slaps them. He speaks down to them. He denigrates them. I mean, if verbal violence or verbal abuse is violence, then how are you saying there's no low-level threat of violence when women are verbally abused all across the internet? Okay. So he says there's no low-level threat, and that's the problem. She's supposed to be afraid that he can injure her.
To be verbally disrespectful beyond the point of reason, because there's no consequence, because they don't fear the repercussion. So listening to that, and this is why anybody familiar with the concept of domestic discipline?
No, explain it for us.
Domestic discipline in a nutshell is me and Courtney are married.
You know what the crazy thing is? Just yesterday, I was going over the Shahzad Ali book, which I'm going to have to take a little break, hence this video, and this is not even a break. And I brought up a discussion that myself and Sister Mariana did in 2017 about this domestic discipline conversation. And to my surprise, I wake up this morning and here he is talking about, have you heard about domestic discipline? You know, have you heard about this new drug? It's how people push information on you until, like, their interest is piqued. They're going to go look. They're going to go try to incorporate it in your lives. And next thing you know, you're down this very slippery slope. It's so crazy. Look. The rain start coming down, because this is madness. This is madness. It was madness then, and it's madness now.
Courtney and I are vibing, but Courtney knows that she can get on one sometimes. And we sit down and say, when you get on one, and after we go through the process, and I use the safe word, banana split, and you still stay on one after I say banana split. You heard me say banana split. I acknowledge you heard me say banana split, and you stay on one. Well, then it's time for the domestic discipline. And it is exactly what it sounds like. Lay across the knee and on her ass. Thank you. I am not kidding. I am not kidding. And what I will do is I will put the links to the women who teach this stuff, and this has been talked about in sectors of the manosphere.
Put the links to the women who teach this stuff. Like I said, we came across this years ago, did a study on it. I'll put the links to the study in the box below. So, and this is not new. This is connected to the cult of domesticity. It's connected to the European. It's connected to the 50s. It's connected to the late 1800s. It's connected to all of these spaces where the woman is put in a space as a perpetual child. She's not able to control herself. And she needs external government and discipline, because everybody is reduced around the male to this childlike status. And the only adult that's present becomes the male. I'm not sure how that works, but yeah, so now he's sliding, he's pushing like the hustle man, he's pushing a thought on them to a great audience, and people are going to try to implement this into their homes, guaranteed, because they have been doing it already. And let's just watch to see whether or not it's going to improve the situation, or whether or not domestic abuse is going to be on the rise, as if that's not a thing.
Oh, correction.
I've never heard of that before in my entire life.
I hadn't heard of it until I got here on YouTube, but I'd heard of the concept, but I didn't hear it that way. And the thing is, it doesn't, and it's nonviolent. And here's the point. Can you imagine being a grown woman?
Non-violent? Can we look up the word violent? How could it be non-violent when the action in itself is violent? You see how we play wordplay? Non-violent means that it's not violent. If you're striking somebody, hitting somebody, if verbal abuse can be violent, because it's abuse, how can hitting somebody be nonviolent? That's contradictory. If you're hitting them, then that's not nonviolence.
Name down in the comment section. And I want you guys to understand the spirit in which you're saying, because this can get really misinterpreted.
Yeah, we adults.
But the thing is, the notion is that women know that the power of life and death resides in the tongue, and you use that instead of using it for our benefit, turning it against your men to the point to where you should not have to fear the venom that's potentially in the tongue of your women. Your enemy should have to fear that, not the men who share your crest.
Yet, sir, you've built a whole entire platform on venom in the tongue. I thought I was on break today, but apparently I am not. I've shared my thoughts. I'll put the link to the video, or probably I'll go over that video on my channel as well, because it's a little older, but it's still on point. It still shares the thought process that this domestic discipline that he's floating to all of these virgin domestic discipline minds, he's floating in a way that it's positive, it's good. It shows that people lack self-control and self-government, right? That's what it shows. Whether you be a man or a woman, when somebody is an adult male and an adult female, they shouldn't have to appeal to the male in this case to hit them, beat them, or do something, verbally accost them, for them to realize, you know what, I'm out of pocket. That means that you need to do some soul searching and some healing, because you're putting yourself in a position to be abused. There's people who come from spaces where this is the only way that others their parents and their upbringing communicated love, and in some weird way they feel as though this is the person showing that they love you. When you're a child, you do as children do. You're an adult now. You should be able to communicate effectively. You should be able to know boundaries. You should be able to know the power of your words. You shouldn't have to look at the husband who's supposed to guide and protect and provide for you and your family and be put to the same level as your children. And some of these things that I research, she has time out. You've done something wrong. Go and stand in the corner with your head down. To a grown 40, 50-year-old woman? Oh, banana split. Let go over and this is something I'm going to show it. This was in the 50s and 60s. You saw it in I Love Lucy. They used to put it in ads. So basically, this is something that the European has perfected. And I find it funny how a lot of melanated people like to take up old things and act as if this is new and exciting. This was in their literature. This was in their television. This were in their adverts. And I'll show you more of that so that you can understand that this whole concept is something that's coming back and is connected to a larger thought that's going to further compromise an already compromised people. If you agree, and if you don't agree, it's all good. You can leave your comments in the description below. I want to thank you for tuning in. I'm going to have to come back with another video that's a little less heavy, because some of this stuff, I tell you what,